Now I'm going to come to a different part of this. We all know how I bought the business, but it doesn't end here. Okay, now I got a business. Okay, and I got to add value. I have to add value. You know why I have to add value? Because in everything I just showed you, that was a zero-sum game. In other words, the business I bought justified its purchase price. And now as it makes money, it's going to pay for that purchase price. It's not going to give a lot to me. It's going to be paying a lot of debt. Okay. Yeah, maybe I can step into the owner's shoes and make a salary on the business and all of that kind of stuff. But if I don't add value, then I'm going to be treading a lot of water here as all the money comes in and I'm shoveling it all back out to pay off all of the acquisition debt that I just incurred. So it's imperative that I make the business more valuable. It took me a little while. Remember, I'm young. This is my first rodeo. Okay. I didn't have the grand plan yet. I did work hard in that business, and I found that working there for really 2 years, I was only able to increase the business 25%. In other words, 10% the first year, 15% the second year, something like that. And now after working my butt off for 2 years, I added, let's say the business is doing $1 million a year in sales. Okay. I only added another $250,000 in sales. And I woke up one morning and it dawned on me when I had no experience, no money. I bought a business that was doing $1 million a year in sales, and I did it with no cash. And then I spent the next 2 years working my butt off. I had now some cash. I had good credit, which I didn't have before. I had all the right things, and yet I'm still working my butt off, and all I added was 25% to the sale. And other people were telling me, hey, Gordon, you're doing great. You increased the business 25%. I said, but wait a minute, I'm working my butt off. And that's what triggered it. If I hadn't had other people telling me how great I was doing, I would not have thought of this. Okay. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I already know what to do to grow this business because you see, I've already done it. There are competitors out there that I can buy. I can buy them the same way I bought this business. I can buy them in 3 to 6 months, and I can double my sales in 3 to 6 months instead of taking another 2 years to build them 20%. And that's what I did. So I went out and bought my largest competitor, who was in California also. And there were only 3 businesses like mine. Let me tell you the product I made. It made a single product called a motorcycle front end fork tube. Okay. Now everybody here knows what a motorcycle is, right? Okay. You got the handlebars, right? And then something connects those handlebars to the wheel, right? And then when you turn the handlebars, there's these 2 fork tubes that come down. They're hydraulic. They compress as the hip bumps in the road, and they're precision part, and that's the front end fork tube. Okay. There were only 3 aftermarket fork tube manufacturers in the United States at this time. I had just bought one of them. They were all around the same size. I had one competitor in California, and then there was another one who manufactured on the East Coast. Now, again, I tend to over-explain things, so please bear with me. If you want to just keep your motorcycle the same as you bought it from the manufacturer, if something happens to your front end fork tube, you're in an accident, okay, and they bend, you got to replace it. So if it's a standard configuration, you just go to the original equipment manufacturer and you buy the fork tube from them. It'll be a little more expensive, but that's where most of them get bought from. The real market for aftermarket front end fork tubes is because people in those days and even today like to convert them to choppers, where they extend the front end. So it now has a longer rake to it. And when they do that, it looks cool, but the manufacturer doesn't like it because they feel it's less safe. So they will not make an aftermarket front end fork tube. So that was left to these 3 companies to do that. There were a lot of little garage shop operations all over the country that made 1 or 2 models for local dealers or whatever. But if you wanted to buy a variety and in volume, you had to buy from one of these 3. So I lucked out because I paid attention to what was going on with my competitors. And in Los Angeles, we had a competitor down in Orange County. That was my only real competitor. And one day, the salesperson who sells me some of my fork tube metal and the things that are my raw materials, he also supplies my competitor. And he says to me, hey, have you heard what's going on and I'm just going to make up the name because I don't want to embarrass anybody. Have you heard what's going on with John's plant? And I said, no. He says, he struck it rich. He's making these real spoked wheels for big American cars, and he's selling them like hot. He can't fill his orders. I took that piece of information, and that registered with me because what if I take the business that he has that competes with me, I buy that from him, I give him the cash for it, okay? I know that sounds strange, me giving him the cash for it, right? But I give him the cash for it, okay? And then what he does is he takes that cash, no longer is it tied up in the business that competes with me where he makes a fairly low margin because it's competitive, and he puts it in his new business where he doesn't have any competition, where he has huge margins, and now he can fill orders and make a whole lot more money than he can competing with me. So I remember, how do we start this whole conversation? You give people what they want, but you got to know what they want. So it takes a little research sometimes to find out what that is. So I arrange a meeting with my competitor. I go down and I show him a set of figures. I said, look, I know I'm your competitor. You're never going to tell me your numbers. but I know you compete with me, so I know your numbers and I know your margins. Here's what they probably are. And I know that your margins are a lot higher here. And if you were to take the business that competes with me and sell it to me, I'll give you cash for it. Okay, you can take that cash and you can put it in another business. He jumped at that. He said, that's fantastic. I love that. Let's do it. All right, now your question is, how do I cash him out, right? Because I'm not giving him a down payment and then paying him over a long period of time. So I have to have a better way. But see, I had my first rodeo a couple of years before. Now it's my second rodeo, and I'm a little bit better writer than I was on my first one. I knew who bought from him. Okay, I knew all of the people who bought from him because they were the only ones who didn't buy from me. I went to those guys and I said, look, I'm planning to buy out my competitor over here. I want to make you a once-in-a-lifetime offer. You'll never see this again ever in life. But I have an inventory because I know what his inventory is because he's selling it to me, right? So he has to show me what his inventory is so I can make him the offer, and he now knows how much he's going to get. So part of the deal I made with him was to not only finance his machinery and equipment, not only finance his inventory. I don't finance his inventory. I sell it at a slight discount to all those distributors who will kill for the discount I'm going to give them because it lets them go into the market and be more competitive selling the product than everybody else is. So they love that kind of an offer. So, and the funny part of it is I don't even have to wait until the stuff gets shipped to him to finance that. I can finance his order. I can finance his purchase order. So I now have all the money in my hands to cash my competitor out. He doesn't have to wait for anything. He just gets cashed out. So he loves it. I end up owning the second one in Los Angeles. Now, 2 in Los Angeles that are one in LA County, one in Orange County on the West Coast. Then there's one major competitor on the East Coast. A fork tube, if you're picturing it, it's a heavy product, right? So you can't ship it coast to coast and the freight charges will eat you up. So you have to have a way of selling most of the stuff on the West Coast. It's only a rare order that somebody can't get filled any other way that they'll order from the East Coast. And the other plant, by the way, had the reverse. So now I have the only 2 manufacturers now that manufacture front-end fork tubes on the West Coast. And it's way less expensive than trying to order from the East Coast. So what do you think I do now that I own the only 2? I raise my prices, right? Because they still have to buy from me. They don't have a choice. Now, I can't raise them to the moon because there is a practical number where the East Coast company can compete with me. He'll just eat the freight charges, right? Okay, so what I did was I raised my prices, and that gives me bigger margins. Now, do I have any problem meeting my debt service now? No, because I got better margins. So now I have value added, right? I've added value to what was there before. And now I'm starting to feel really good, right? So the next thing I do is I say, okay, let me go buy my East Coast manufacturer, right? My competitor back there. So we were competitive all the way through to the Mississippi River. In other words, when he shipped west, he had to compete with me when I shipped east. So our pricing was still competitive in the middle of the country. I made him an offer to buy his company, and in his case, I paid him a premium, okay? I paid him a little extra for the company, and I could even be a little more generous on the terms for him because now I'm making plenty of money in the company that I have. So he sells me his company. Now I own the only 3 companies in the United States that make front-end fork tubes for motorcycles for the aftermarket. Every major distributor in the United States buys from me and has to buy from me. So if they're going to cover the custom market, this is a critical product, and they have to buy it from me. Now, if I was General Motors, the government would have shut me down because they said, you can't, this is anti-competitive, you can't do that, Sherman Antitrust Act. You don't worry about that when you're a small company. Nobody bothers you. Nobody thinks in those terms when you're a small company. So, all right, so now I got this. So, all right, we're all smart people here. What's going to be my next strategic move? You're going to hear this word more and more now. Strategic move. What's my next strategic move? I own the best distribution system in the motorcycle parts industry. Everybody has to buy from me. They have no choice. So what's my next step? Thank you. You are a smart group. I like this. This is good. So now what industry do I know? I know this thing called metal fabrication. My thing is all built around metal fabrication. So we start buying other metal fabrication products for motorcycles, like luggage racks, like handlebar manufacturers, kickstand manufacturers. In other words, just think of all the different parts of a motorcycle. Okay, we start buying those up.